It's been a minute since I made the last episode of the Complete Beginner's Guide to Fishing. Sorry about that. But this is episode 5. I'm going to show you how to spool a spinning reel. If you buy a brand new fishing rod and reel combo, sometimes they're going to have line on it, sometimes they won't. So if they don't, this is how you put monofilament line on a spinning reel. I'd like to preface this guide with saying that there are a lot, and I mean a lot, of different ways to put line on a fishing reel. This is just how I do it with my spinning reels. Before we begin, if you have a 2-piece rod, you're going to want to take the top part off, and before you start tying any knots, you want to send your line down through the first guide. That'll be important later, but for now, I want you to do that. And then we're going to move to a flat surface. We're going to put our rod down. We'll carry on with that part. The first thing you want to do is find a flat surface, lay your rod down on the flat surface. Then you're going to take your line. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to use this white braided line here, but when we actually do the spooling, it'll be monofilament. We'll get more into that after. The first thing you're going to do is tie an overhand knot. And then you're going to loop that knot, that loop, over your bail and cinch it down. We're not done yet. Before you loop your knot over your spool, you have to make sure that your bail is open. If your bail is closed and you put the loop over it and then try to spool it, it won't work. So once you've got your first knot, and all you do is just tie a second overhand knot, just like that. Tighten it down on your spool, and then you clip off the tag end. Then you close your bail, and we'll move on to the next part. Okay, so now I've got my rod with my line going down to the first eyelet, got my knot tied on my reel, my bail is closed, and I have the spool in my other hand. This part is easy. You don't need any special tools. Even though they make special tools that make this really easy, you don't need that stuff, and this works just fine. You're going to take your spool and you're going to put it down on the floor in front of you with the label facing up. And then all you're going to do is you're going to take your whatever hand you don't reel with. For me, I reel with my left hand, so I'm going to use my right hand. I'm going to put my hand just behind the first eyelet, putting just a little bit of pressure on the line, and then I'm going to slowly start reeling. You might need to brace the butt end of the rod against your hip, and then you're just going to slowly start reeling. And you're going to do this until your spool is almost full. You don't want to fill it right to the edge. You want to leave about 1/8 to 1/16 of an inch gap between the end of the line and the end of the spool. And I'll show you what that looks like once we get more of our line on here. The other trick is that you want to make sure you're putting enough pressure on the line so that the line goes tight onto your reel. If the line is too loose, you're going to get knots. It's going to spool itself off the reel without you having to do anything, and it's just going to cause you messes and problems and a lot of frustration. So you want to make sure that line is going on the spool tight. If you find that when you're doing this, the line going through your hand is causing a little bit of friction burn, you can always grab a glove or a rag, piece of cloth, literally anything to take some of that pressure off your hand, or some of that friction off your hand, so that you can carry on doing this. Sometimes a glove will give you a little bit better grip on the line as well, so you can get it just a bit tighter. Another thing I want to mention is if you're trying to do this and you're holding your line and you notice that your spool is doing that and it's not really pulling any line out, all you have to do, this knob here is your drag. You just tighten up that drag a little bit and it'll start spooling your line again. Okay, so we've pretty much filled up our spool. Now remember I was saying you don't want to put too much or too little line on. As you can see, that's kind of how much space you want to have. About 1/8 to 1/16 of an inch. The reason is, if there's not enough line on your spool, then you're going to run into problems when you're casting because the line is constantly going to be rubbing against the edge of the spool here. If you have too much line on your spool, then the line is just going to peel off without you having to do anything. You're going to get wind knots, it's going to get tangled, it's just going to be a mess all around. So you want to make sure to leave just that little bit of space and not over spool your line. All that's left is then you just cut the line going to your spool with a pair of scissors. If you have a 2-piece rod, you put your second piece back on. Then you run your line up through the rest of the guides. And now you're ready to tie on your favorite lure, or any lure. Tie something on here that's gonna help you catch fish. And there you have it. Simple, simple, simple. No special tools, just a rod, reel, maybe a pair of scissors, and your spool of line. And that's all you need. I hope you enjoyed this video and that I could help teach you something for the absolute beginner of fishing. I'll see you in the next episode. Don't forget to watch that one.